Welcome to the third and final day of ComFest 2019. Welcome to the solar stage, and we have a great list of speakers to round out the third and final day of ComFest. For the list of organizations that are here, go to page 23 of your book. And for the mission and principles of ComFest, go to page 9 of the handbook. You'll find those there. This year's theme is Restoring Our Planet, Reclaiming Our Hope. Shout out to Greta Thunberg, a 15-year-old Swedish girl who spoke to the UN last year. Our first speaker today is Professor Spira, PhD, and he is the author of several books, which are right in front of the speaker right here. And without further ado, Professor Spira.
Thank you so much. Good morning, ComFest. I am Professor Spira, and I practice something called the Mucusless Diet Healing System by Professor Arnold Ehret. And the Mucusless Diet Healing System is one of the first healing systems, one of the first plant-based or vegan or whatever term you want to use to denote a transitional system that takes you from a diet of pus and mucus-forming foods, mixed diet, the standard American diet, or all these terms that we have, and transition to a diet that is free of mucus-forming foods. And what foods are mucus-forming? So there is a misconception that we're only talking about foods that make you simply blow your nose, essentially have a reaction, a lymphatic reaction. What we're actually talking about is foods that the body cannot totally eliminate, that the digestive acids and all these things, people think that they eat stuff and everything is taken care of by the digestive fluids and all this kind of stuff. That's not the case. There's residue, slimy residue that is left over that builds up over time. So if you think of something like, say, white bread, if you put some white bread in some water and let it sit there for several hours, come back to it, what does that bread turn into? Is it a tasty treat? Not really. It's nasty, it's slimy. The longer you let it just sit there, it's going to just turn into this slime. If you, say, put some strawberries in water, or you can even chop them up a little bit, put strawberries in water, or grapes, or watermelon, or lettuce. Put that in water, and what happens to that? Well, if we're talking about fruit, it's not going to turn into that slime. It essentially, well, with fruit, it either can turn into kind of a syrup or something that basically isn't very slimy. So what we're doing with these mixed diets that just have all these different mucus-forming foods is we make it very hard for our bodies to function as they should. And in our society, we mistake stimulation for true vitality. So the entire society is basically hopped up on pus and mucus-forming foods. So when I say pus, what are we talking about? So at that point, we're talking particularly about meat and fish and meat and all these different types of things degrade. This is tissue that over time, again, the body can't, you think it's dealing with it, but it's not. And the toxic waste that is from uneliminated meat is devastating. And it results in so many of these ailments and illnesses and things that we are being plagued with today. I mean, it seems like there's a new, they make up names for all kinds of illnesses, all these different terms. We look at disease terms kind of as bad words, like those are cuss words. We don't really like to use that type of terminology because the source is the same, the foundation, even if it's something that people say, well, I was born with such and such. We are talking about generations and generations of people that have been improperly eating, that have been getting further and further away from a natural diet. And Professor Arnold Ehret in the Mucusless Diet Healing System lays out his theory of disease, saying that constipation, and not just constipation of the bowels, but constipation of the entire organism, the whole cellular organism, constipation is the foundation of human illness. You talk about people that do have these bad words that they have been diagnosed with, you're always going to pretty much see a filthy colon. And if you have the little thing that I passed out, there's something that people don't think it exists. I don't understand how that still is, but something we call mucoid plaque that is just basically just uneliminated residue, lymphatic fluids, all this nasty stuff that's sitting in the intestines. And because most people have 32 feet of impacted intestines, just walking around with all of this toxic waste in their system. And when you start to eliminate that waste properly, and I advocate the Mucusless Diet Healing System transition diet, and when you start to get rid of this stuff, do a little colon irrigation. We promote lemon juice and distilled water enemas. But when you start to get rid of this stuff, the horrible, toxic, smelly, crazy waste that starts coming out is very alarming. But isn't it better to have it out than in? Ehret says anything that we eliminate is waste. There's certain ailments that people say, well, my body is eliminating things it shouldn't be eliminating. The body is trying to get rid of what's unnecessary. And as long as we're holding on to all of this waste, we're going to have problems. Now, I've worked with a lot of different people. Professor Arnold Ehret, he was curing people that had been considered incurable by the thousands at his various sanitariums. And of course, Professor Arnold Ehret, I would encourage you to check him out, look him up and his history, because a lot of this back to nature, the things that in the spirit of ComFest and other things like it, that back to nature spirit, that community spirit, Professor Arnold Ehret was at the forefront of that back to nature movement in the 1910s and early 1920s. And somewhere along the way, that original back to nature movement got way off kilter. And people started, instead of focusing on diet, fruits, vegetables, plant-based type of diets, we started to get into this drug thing and this sex thing, you know. And so by the time you get to the so-called hippie thing in the 60s, a lot of the original back to nature principles and values had been lost. And so it's important that we understand this history and we go back and we try to get back on track, because we need to get back to nature. I mean, we have to take, you know, I'm not anti-technology at all. If any of you have ever seen me perform with my gear and stuff, you say, yeah, I'm not anti-technology. But I want us to be able to use technology in a way that helps us live a more natural life in terms of the things that we put into our body. Because all this processed food, all this stuff, again, it turns into this slime inside the body. It is taking us out slowly but surely. I used to be 300 pounds. I was a fairly big guy. But worse than that, I had a lot of ailments that I just thought I had to live with, because I had a very sick mother growing up that was in and out of the hospital. 1 year, my mother was in and out of the hospital 200 times. It called the ambulance. My aunt had reminded me about that. So that was part of my lifestyle growing up. My mom would be in and out of the hospital. I'd go and stay with my grandma and aunt on the off times. And then ultimately, when I was in 6th grade, after my mother had her legs amputated, she got gangrene in her feet. After all of that, she passed away. And when I was in 6th grade, and so I had this stigma that that was what life was for me, because I was born with it. She was my mom. She died young and had her legs amputated, so I'm destined to suffer. I'm destined to have all these illnesses and ailments. And at that time, I started taking pharmaceutical medications. I was 7 years old, the allergy stuff, and then I started doing headache medicine. When I was 18, I had a CPAP unit because they told me I had sleep apnea as I snored so bad and I wasn't breathing at night. And all these things. When I was 19 years old, I met a man by the name of Willie Smart, aka Brother Air, who turned me on to Professor Arnold's Mucusless Diet Healing System. And at that time, I had these chronic migraine headaches every day. All through high school, I used to go to the nurse's office almost every day, and they had Advil waiting for me there. So again, I just accepted that. I thought, well, there's nothing I can do about it. This is just my lot in life. But after I read the Mucusless Diet Healing System, something clicked. It made sense. I didn't understand everything, and that's one reason why I created this annotated version of the original Mucusless Diet Healing System that's just kind of explains things in the margins, because there are some outdated concepts and some things that are kind of hard to understand. So I didn't get it all, but there were some fundamental principles that kind of got to me. I was like, man, that makes so much sense. The transition, do things slowly, gradually, yet you're going toward this goal of a mucus-free life. Because if mucus-forming foods and pus-forming foods are the foundation of so much inflammation, so much human illness, then let's see what happens if we get off of it. And so, started practicing the Mucusless diet, and within 6 months I lost about 100 pounds, but way better than the weight, because we don't talk that much about weight. That's something that interests people, so I mention it. But what I was excited about was not having daily headaches anymore, not needing the CPAP unit anymore, not having all those same allergy issues. I was able to get off the allergy medication. And I went from that, if you have my little handout, I looked, when I was 18 years old, I kind of looked like I was in my 30s or 40s already. But then once I got into the diet, I then started looking like a teenager. And it totally transformed. It really was like a rebirth. It's like I was starting over again and moving forward from there. And so within a couple years of practicing the diet, I said, man, the world needs to hear about this. But at that time, it was things have come so far in the past 10, 15 years. It was rough back then. There was where I was at, Cincinnati, there was no such thing as like a vegan restaurant. No one was even vegetarian, and you start using that word, people are looking at you funny or wanting to cuss you out or something. It's bad. It's not like that. It's not as bad. Of course, it's still bad, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. But I said, man, this is something that people need to hear about. And I started to talk with people, and anywhere I could, I would give away free books and just really try to get people to check out this information. And started a band called the Breatharian Ensemble, and we would express things musically in very kind of avant-garde, free jazz fashion. And I knew eventually I would do this and have the books and have all that, but I didn't know it would be this early. I kind of thought that I'd be okay, I'll tour the world as a musician and that will be my thing, and then when I'm in my 60s or 70s, I'll get to all of this. But the universe has an interesting way of changing your priorities, and so I said, no, you need to do this now, because people need this information. So just to go over what we got here, I got the annotated Mucusless Diet Healing System, which is it's been bestseller on Amazon. Then these other books are some pamphlets. There's Rational Fasting is another important one. Spira Speaks, Dialogues and Essays in a Mucusless Diet Healing System. That's my own book of all. I call it a lifestyle book. It's not a diet book. We talk about how to deal with your family. You know, part of the lifestyle is if you're doing enemas, sometimes people get funny about their family being right next door, you know, in the house. I'm like, well, how do I do my enemas with the family here? And they're making fun of me and this and that. So I have solutions for those things. So I get into that in Spira Speaks. We've got a couple new releases. There's a Physical Fitness Through Superior Diet, which was a previously out of print thing of Professor Arnold Ehret. And then I created a Spira's Notes, which is like a summary, kind of a Cliff's Notes of the Mucusless Diet Healing System. So there's outlines for every lesson and review questions and vocabulary and all that kind of stuff. So, and it's a companion to my e-course, Mucusless Diet Healing System e-course, which I released last year. So, because a lot of people don't realize or forget that the original Mucusless Diet book was actually intended as a textbook for an in-person course that Ehret actually did. He used to take his course back in 1921. It was cost $100 back then, which for inflation that would be like $25,000 or not $25,000, $2,500 or something today, because he was getting results. And the powers that be have managed to suppress the achievements of Professor Arnold Ehret, because if all of the interests, the moneyed interest, don't like the Mucusless diet because there's not a whole lot to sell. So unless we're putting out some books and information, but I'm not trying to push supplements on you. I'm not pushing herbs on you. I'm not pushing any of those things that most people in this industry tend to make their money pushing those things. I'm saying, look, you can do this, so much of this, with the diet, with a proper transition diet, with things like the enemas and the sun bathing, and there's natural things that we can do that can take us so much further than we think. Mentally, we've been conditioned into this medical kind of thing where we take something and it's more of a treatment-based concept. So we take something and we feel better for a while, but then we got to keep taking whatever it is. This is something we're throwing that type of concept out, because a lot of people, when they get into the natural healing and things like that, then they'll get into the herbs, and the problem becomes, instead of the pharmaceutical medicine, they just switch that out, and now it's the herbs. So they're still relying on something. Now, I'm not saying herbs are bad. it's the mentality, the way that people look at them that I have found debilitating for some people, because they also will forget the diet part, which is the most important part to the actual healing process. And so they'll, okay, well, what herbs do I take? What should I do? It's like, well, first, let's deal with this transition diet. Let's deal with the systematic principle. I've seen so many people just totally transform their lives, just lose a bunch of weight, get over ailments, cure different things that they've been dealing with, and it's so. I want to say it's so easy. I said it's simple. Practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System in 2019, it's not easy. So I don't like to say that where it's like, oh, it's just so easy to use. Like, you can do it. There's a lot of social challenges where, because it's one thing that I really, there's only like one thing here at this, this ComFest, as progressive as it's supposed to be. There's like a watermelon stand, and I don't know if I hope there's something vegan here now, but there's still, there should be like 10 vegan trucks, and there's salad truck. Where is it? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And so we have to start to do these things, take advantage, especially in this shift, because whoever is going to take advantage now of this shift toward health and this awareness is going to be in good shape, because people are ready. If there was a salad truck out there, or even just a fruit better smoothies, not the smoothies, I don't like those where the corn syrup smoothies, they put that little stuff in there, like a real smoothie, all that kind of stuff will clean up because people are ready. But we got to get the concept and the vision and the consciousness there to really understand that this is where we need to go. As I said, it's a wonderful world, but one connection that I often like to make that not a lot of people make, and a lot of people give me flack for this because they don't want to believe it, but I say that pus and mucus eating and humans getting away from their natural diet is the root cause of all of this insanity in the world. The murders and the rapes and the enslaving people and all of these things, the root cause of that is humans getting away from who they are, losing their reason, getting away from a natural diet. And if we, like there's a song that I sang yesterday with performed my friend Brother Air. We say, soul food killed more black people than the Ku Klux Klan.
Soul food killed more black people than the Ku Klux Klan. That's some real talk now. Soul food killed more black people than the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. Soul food killed more black people than the Ku Klux Klan. Give it up. Soul food.
We don't understand that this is the foundation of this insanity. So when I'm watching the news, that's all I see is, oh man, that dude is definitely a pus eater. They're pus eaters, but because take it out of the equation. So test it. Actually test that. Like we say, we know what all these folks are eating. Take pus and mucus out of the equation and see if people behave like that. See if they're stimulated to want to do those things. Before I practiced the Mucusless diet, I used to enjoy, I would go out to the club and me and my boys would get into fights with people and all that kind of stuff. I was a different person back then. Once I got into the Mucusless diet, that type of stimulation, that desire to want to go and just be insane left. And I didn't miss it. But I transitioned. It wasn't something I ever tried to force myself to do. I don't like that force kind of stuff where you're like, okay, I'm gonna force myself to do this. I work with a lot of people that try to get into raw foods and raw foodism and fruitarianism and these kinds of things. And they do it without any transition. I tend to be, someone that says, okay, look, you have to transition. It's nice that you want to try to eat nothing but fruit or to be high raw and all that kind of stuff. Those are nice aspirations, but we got to be realistic about the generations that we have to transform. There's generations and generations, and that's one thing I like to say: study the history of your stomach. To me, one of the most interesting things about the DNA, you know, I did my little DNA test and all that kind of stuff, but looking at the storyline of my stomach, because you can study that. There's the history of, and, you know, there's a lot of gaps among the anthropologists and all the history of human diet kind of studies. But when you go back far enough and you get into the plant-eating, fruits and vegetable humans, you know, we all go back to that. But how do you get back to that? You know, you go there. For me, you know, I'm kind of split, but I go back to Africa, but I got a little Europe, you know, and kind of go, but you get back and eventually get back to Africa, and you're eventually going to get back to a plant-based type of situation. So your transition has to reflect that trajectory. What do we say? Fish eaters? Well, no, I mean, you're wrong, but that's cool. That's cool. But I mean, fish is the worst meat that you could eat. If you're gonna have meat, fish is the absolute worst that you could eat. Now, why is that? Now, just think about it logically. So if you have an animal that breathes oxygens, the whole breathing process, Eric says, looks at the body as an air gas engine. It's a different paradigm, a different way to look at the body. The human body is an air gas engine. The breathing process is a cleansing process. You know, if you do some of the yoga and you breathe out and see how long you can hold it before your body forces you to breathe back in. When you are forced to breathe back in, that carbon dioxide has built up. Bringing the oxygen in cleanses that out. So the most fundamental thing to our life is not eating food, but breathing air. And as soon as oxygen and breathing air is stopped, that's the end of the story. So you take animals that breathe air are fundamentally going to be cleaner than something that's swimming around in the same thing that it goes to the bathroom in. And you get it out, and it smells, and that's even a pejorative term, smells like fish. Because here's the test. Because you get small children, if I had on a table right here, if I put some apples, cherries, and a banana or something up here in one bowl, and then right next to it, I have some raw fish and maybe a chunk of beef or something, not cooked, because we gotta be natural. What do you think the child is gonna grab? Is the child, now I'm not saying now, there might be a couple children that will grab the meat. I'm saying we have degenerated to a certain extent. But generally speaking, most children are gonna grab the fruit because there's a fundamental connection there, that sweetness that we can experience. There's a connection that we have to that, and it's very apparent. Does anybody got any questions? I'll take a break to answer the question.
What do you think? With your example, I think that especially with the child making a decision, if they were looking at eating a live tuna fish or a live cow,
right,
not chunk meat,
right.
There's no doubt that they would choose.
That's even another taking it to the next level.
Right. So, because we've totally, that's how people have been duped for so long. Because when I think about my personal adaptation and consciousness, it's one thing to be told that you're consuming an animal. It's another thing entirely to witness the process of that animal becoming a piece of whatever you're consuming. And nobody ever offered me the life cream or the death cream. They offered me the ice cream, everybody was eating it, it was delicious.
Yeah.
But nobody ever said, would you like the plant cream or the death cream?
Right.
So I knew that there was like horrible things involved with the one and nothing wrong with the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Now am I saying that life cream, plant cream is healthy? Junk food.
Well, yeah. Unless you get, you can freeze a couple bananas and put that through the processor. There's ways to make it without a lot of the added stuff. But that's a good point. Yeah, that takes that example to the next level of if they were to see the live version of it, would they want to? There's the videos that are out there of the little kids that are trying to protect the animals that they're wanting to butcher and kill. And I mean, that gives me hope. When you see that there's still that consciousness there that is in a lot of young people, and we can harness that. I mean, we got to learn from that.
So what will we do if we miss eating chicken and meat?
I don't miss eating chicken and meat.
How about fish?
I won't eat that either.
Oh my God, so what?
I won't eat animals.
Did I stutter?
Yeah, do you think they suffer?
I think that they don't really like being cooked in the oven.
What's your question?
I know what they do when they torture people. Okay, I'm an expert.
Okay.
They kill it, chop it up,
Okay.
Now, the question I have, okay, in terms of is more intelligent individual, just for brief, tends to be more of a he than he.
Not that I know of. The most intelligent, some of the most intelligent animals I can think of are either vegetable eaters or fruit eaters. All fruit eaters. Now, if they start to hang out, so say some of the primates, though there's some that eat whatever but there's some primates that are fruitarian, that eat, if all they have access to is fruit, that's what they're going to live on. Because see, we have a fundamentally different, and you're going to hate this, we have a fundamentally different view of this evolution theory, where what we're seeing is humans are degenerating down into lower species. And that we're not part of this great rise and this great progression into this human phenomenon. We are something so much greater than this. But we have eaten ourselves down into the hell of our own making. And it's going to get worse and worse unless we turn it around. All right, so I want to thank you all. And I do have a couple books that I can sell here. You can get it on Amazon. Mucus-free-life.com is my website. And check it out. Mucusless Diet Healing System by Professor Arnold Eric. And just transition. Thank you very much. Peace, love, and good.